we're going to try another one of these live events here, but instead of cooking eggs, I'm going to be folding laundry. So something I actually want to try here is I'm going to try to do these live events a little bit more, but what I'm going to do is on the live events, I'm going to talk about the videos that I uploaded this week, which actually this week I've actually done quite a few, more than I normally do. I did put my mic here because the last time the audio was really bad, so I'm hoping this helps the audio a little bit. But, so I actually ended up doing 3 videos for Dante Inferno. One just uploaded this morning, I believe. It was just me going through the Kickstarter. And then I also did 2 videos, 2 playthroughs basically, one of the confrontation phase and one of the chronicle phase. So go ahead and check those out if you have seen, or if you want to check those out. Another thing, if you're watching this post, what's a good time to go live? Like, time of days, I just usually try to do it when my kids are either at school or out playing with friends right now. My wife's got 1 kid, or 2 of my kids, my other kid's at friend's house playing, right? So I kind of have to do these when I have time and availability. But what's a good time for people here? Because I feel like I need to like preset this. I kind of just go live randomly, which is why no one's watching right now, right? But if there's a good time, maybe there's not good a time. It's just a matter of letting people know that I'm going live earlier. I don't know. Anyways, so let's talk about Dante Inferno. That's on Kickstarter right now. I'll have to check. Can I put notes in here? Ooh, maybe that's what I'll do real quick. Does this stay live if I go like, did that stay live? I don't know, timer's not going anymore. There we go. Yeah, I don't know if I can start a poll. Ooh, I could start a poll. That's cool. Chat viewing options, top chat, live chat. Yeah, I don't know. But I was going to say I was going to put the link in the comments down below, but I don't know if I could do that. Anyway, so Dante Inferno is going to be, if you haven't looked too much at it, it is going to be another boss battler, right? A lot of people are comparing it to Oathsworn. I say that just because people are comparing it to Oathsworn. However, as actual gameplay, I don't think it's that comparable. What is comparable is the fact that there's a narrative phase and a boss battle phase, basically, right? But the chronicle phase, or the narrative phase, can be very effective, not very effective, can really change what's kind of going on. If you watch my playthrough through the confrontation phase, in the middle of the confrontation phase, my objective, I didn't get a new, what am I trying to say? Basically, I got an objective added in the middle of my confrontation phase due to the choices that I made in my chronicle phase, right? So, meaning, basically it was like, hey, in the middle of it, now you don't actually have to kill Minos, you have another option. Which, you know, that's actually kind of cool, the fact that you could actually change your goal, your objective in the middle of it due to the chronicle phase, right? So that's definitely a different aspect there. You're also getting different type of equipment, right? I've played it a couple times. Each time I've gotten different equipment. Only the one time was I able to get that different objective. So that different objective's not always going to happen. It just might happen depending on options. Obviously, it's the first level, so the fact that there is an option on the first level, I'm hoping that that kind of continues throughout it, and that there will be more and more options throughout all the levels. Not options, but chances to do something different, basically, that will actually change stuff. But when playing the Chronicle phase, I'll go over that, because that's the video I posted first. I think it posted up on Monday. The Chronicle phase is going to be basically a choose your own adventure story, right? You're going to read a small little text, then you are going to do what it says. It's either going to tell you to go do an ordeal, which I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's going to say go to this place on the map, or it's going to say go to this other text, or it's going to give you a choice. And then depending on your choice, you either go on to other places, or you're on the actual like board thing where you're putting out cards, or you're gonna do a little bit more. Anyways, choose your own adventure, right? The good and bad thing here, the replayability is kind of mixed, at least for the first level, right? Because it was cool the second time I played it. I actually I got new things, right? I was able to get a card that changed who I was battling and the objective during the Chronicle phase or the confrontation phase. I got some new equipment, so the equipment was new and different. But the story was probably 90% the same, right? Because the thing is a lot of those things that you could get is dependent on the order that you do things. So I went to maybe one or two new places, but I changed the order I went through them, and therefore, because the order was different, I got different stuff. Which, once again, is cool because it changes stuff up. But it means you're still looking at the same story aspect, because the story aspect, right? The story doesn't change. I'm still reading the same thing of text, just in a different order, right? Anyway, so the story itself is not going to change that much, sadly. I don't know, maybe it might do it later on. If you just joined, I'm talking about Dante Inferno. Kind of going over the videos that I've gone over this week, or that I've posted this week up on my channel. So, anyways, what I was talking about with the Chronicle phase and the replayability, I'm indifferent about it. It is cool because I definitely, the equipment I had different, which definitely changed my tactics during the Chronicle phase, but the story was the same. I wish there was a way to hide, I guess, some of the story, or some things that could happen in the story. Because if it was, I don't know. And I'm trying to decide what would make it better, what would make the replayability a little bit better. Because when the replayability of a game, right, it's good when something different happens because of the variability. But when the story is exactly the same, and the whole part, that whole 30, 45 minutes is all about the story, how much do you want to play that same story over again? Anyways, just my thoughts on it that itself. I have not played Oathsworn. This is actually one of the first boss battlers that I've played myself. I definitely watched a lot of Meet Me at the Table there, and all of their playthroughs of Oathsworn, so I definitely have a very good understanding of what Oathsworn is like. But this is my first boss battler that I've actually played myself, and I actually enjoyed it. I was worried about playing a boss battler because I'm very into dungeon crawlers, right? I very much like dungeon crawlers, but with dungeon crawlers, you're dancing on the board, you're fighting multiple deck characters, you're killing a lot of characters, right? It's more of that movement, I feel like, is a little bit more important in a dungeon crawler, which is why I really like dungeon crawlers. I like that aspect of dancing around, fighting all the different monsters, getting the different angles. Where a boss battler is more of like, hey, here's the field, here's your one bad guy, and you're just dancing around in a single area rather than going through like the whole dungeon. Anyways, so I was worried about dungeon crawlers, honestly, because it seemed kind of, or not dungeon crawlers, boss battlers. I was kind of worried about it. And But I really enjoyed the boss battle aspect. It wasn't too repetitive like I thought it would be, because you're just dancing around. I think one reason for that is the fact of that the terrain is very different. So it's not only where you are on the map, but it's the levels, and there's levels all over the map. It's not like there's just one mountain over there that you could go up. But I feel like it's actually pretty. It was pretty. I felt like the movement actually mattered a lot more than I thought it would with this boss battler. Like Oathsworn is cool, but there's no terrain other than the trees that you have to maybe dance around. But this actually feels like movement matters, especially when you have someone like the Outlaw that is going to change depending on the level that they're at. And anyways, so I definitely enjoyed my couple playthroughs of Dante Inferno. That is for sure. If you're looking at the Kickstarter, I did a video that posted this morning that just went over the Kickstarter. The King of Average also just posted one this morning that went over the Kickstarter, which he has done dealings with CGS, so he actually has some good information too. So go ahead and check that one out as well. But the confrontation phase is definitely where it's at. The Chronicle phase was enjoyable. Oh, the ordeals. Let's talk about the ordeals. Now there is a lot of controversy right now that's going on with the Kickstarter and the ordeals during the Chronicle phase. So the ordeals are basically when you've got 2 decks of cards. Within this deck of cards, each one is just a number, and there's 2 decks, 3, and within the deck there's numbers 3 through 10 in each deck. Depending on the difficulty, depends on how many of each one you draw. And then you draw some Arcana cards. The Arcana cards have numbers in the top left corner. And you have to basically match up the 2 cards to add or subtract to that top left-hand corner number there. Anyways, the big problem with it, or that people have been worrying about, is the fact that it's a lot of math, right? You're adding, subtracting. Like, is it going to make it feel like it's just more work than actual gameplay or fun? I was also worried about when I first saw that ordeal part of Dante Inferno. I was like, oh, that doesn't look enjoyable, right? It wasn't very innovative. It wasn't like, oh, that's so cool, that's something new. And it was like, okay, that might be interesting. But going through it, at least the first couple times, was very enjoyable, actually. It was actually very enjoyable to, I don't know, I do like math, so take that with a grain of salt. Math growing up was one of my subjects, and so take it with a grain of salt that I did enjoy it. But definitely, kind of what people have talked about as well, sorry my mic fell off, is, okay, I did enjoy it my first couple times going through it. And each Chronicle phase, you're only doing like 2 or 3 ordeals. Maybe 4, but mostly just 2 or 3. So it's not like it's the whole Chronicle phase that you're actually going through this, right? But people are very worried that it's going to feel like it's just a grind. Anyways, and that was my worry, is after a while, I enjoyed it, right, going through it the first couple times, but around circle 7 or 8, am I still going to enjoy it? Am I still going to feel like it's fun? Or is it just going to become work? A couple thoughts that I had. Well, they weren't the real thoughts, but I don't know if they would really help. But the thoughts of like, okay, right now this is like the difficulty. As you go through the 9 levels of hell, is there some way that you can make it more interesting, right? Change it up. I don't want to just make it harder, like, oh, you just have to do more, right? Because that's just more grindy. But if there's something that you can add to it, so which once again, I don't know, I don't have a good idea of what that means, but it's a thought of like, okay, is there a way that you could still keep this system, but make it more interesting and kind of make it something that will be enjoyable for all 9 levels. And then not only after all 9 levels, but all 9 levels, and then if you want to play through it again, right, because there's only 9 scenarios, so which is about 30 hours of play, right? They're kind of making it shorter, so the idea to play through it again is easier, right? Because it's not like, right, like Chronicles of Drunagor, to go through everything, the expansions and everything is like 40 scenarios, right? Like how likely is it that I'm actually going to go through all 40 levels multiple times? Where this one is kind of like, okay, it's only 9 levels, so the idea to go through it multiple times actually might be a realistic thing, right? If you really enjoy the game. However, how much are you going to want to go through it again, right? If you have to, if you're already having a hard time with those ordeals and or with the gameplay, is this going to be something that you actually want to go through more often? Like I said, I did enjoy it, but we'll see if it keeps going through it. Let me know if you guys think, what you guys think of Dante, if you've looked at Dante Inferno, or if that is even a game that you've even heard of, or if it's your style or not your style type of game. Let me know down in the comments down below of what you guys think about this game, especially because they're the exact same day. There's 2 Inferno games that went up onto Kickstarter, GameFound. Kickstarter is just, I always use Kickstarter no matter if it's Backer Kit, Kickstarter, or GameFound, right? They're basically that. Kickstarter is like Kleenexes, right? Where it's not a Kleenex, it's a tissue. Kleenex is a brand. Where I feel like Kickstarter is just the brand for any type of crowdfunding. So I say Kickstarter a lot when it's on GameFound, but I don't know, in my head it's all the same thing. So, but when you have 2 games with basically the same name, you have Dante Inferno, and then you just have Inferno. And they're very different games, but obviously they're based off of Dante Alighieri's aspect or writings, you know, the Divine Comedy. So they're both the same thing, but it's not as... Well, it's just interesting that they even went up the same day. Especially, I don't know much about the Inferno game, but with CGS and their Dante Inferno, like they actually put it off for a long time because they wanted to make sure Chronicles of Drunagor was all shipped and out to everyone before they started it. And then Chronicles took longer, so it actually ended up not being when they wanted it to. So they pushed it back, and then they pushed it back onto the exact same day that another Inferno game was going live. So I don't know which one was technically first, but in my head CGS was first because they were actually going to do it a while ago. But so that is kind of my thoughts and ideas with Dante. Now, I want to talk about this really bad. I don't know, or at least do a video about this, about biases and YouTubers. Right? I think I have found a newfound thought process with biases and reviews and all of that stuff, right? Because usually we're like, oh, if it's a paid review, you know, stay off of it because that paid review is going to be very biased because they're getting the money, which is definitely a thing, don't get me wrong. I definitely agree with that aspect. But then I'm part of a lot of like Facebook groups, right? And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I just watch the small YouTubers because they're not getting paid, so you know don't have that bias, and so you can know exactly what they think. But me as a small YouTuber, right? I have just over 1,000 subscribers, which mind blowing to me, to be honest. But right, so I'm a small YouTuber. I feel like small YouTubers might have just as much, if not a greater bias to say something good about a game than some bigger YouTuber that got paid for his review. Because as a large YouTuber, let's say Board Game Co., Quackalope, even Dice Tower, right? A company approaches them, or they approach a company, most likely a company approaches them, says, hey, I would love for you to review my game. What are your costs? You know, and they say, oh, well, our cost is this and this. And so they pay the cost. They get, they pay that cost. The board gamer reviewer takes it and says, oh, I really don't like this game, but I got paid for it. But if I say something bad about it, what is my repercussion? Right? What is going to happen to my YouTube channel, to my relationship with the designer? What is going to happen if I say something bad about this? And let's say it's something super bad, right? He says it's a horrible game, and that creator goes, wow, that was very unfair. I'm never working with that creator again. How does that hurt Dice Tower? How does that affect Dice Tower and everything that they do? Not much, right? They've got hundreds of designers, hundreds of companies asking for them. So if they lose one company that doesn't want to work with them anymore because they don't like their games, they said something bad, they thought it was unfair, whatever it was, what do they lose? One company out of hundreds. Now let's take that same scenario as for me, right? And I have a small channel. I finally get a board game company to allow me to review one of their games for free, right? I don't do anything, but a company actually wants me to review a game, which I'm like, yeah, right? Like, as a YouTuber, that's like one of the things that you're like hoping that will happen, and it finally happens. And then, what if I don't like it? I end up not liking the game. What am I to lose now that if I say I don't like this game, I give it a very negative review because I don't like it for whatever reason? Now what? Now that company that just worked with me, they don't want to work with me. And what does that do to me as a small channel? Horrible things, because I finally got one to work with me, but I was honest. Now I don't have any more board game companies that want to work with me. And that might spread to other board gamers like, oh, that small YouTuber, like, he's brutal. Don't send your games to him, right? And as a small creator, that really hurts my growth. So who's more biased? The one that got paid, the big company that got paid, or the small YouTuber that just ruined a relationship? Maybe not even a full relationship, but just someone that's willing to send their games for reviews, right? Who just got hurt the most from that negative review? It was definitely the smaller creator. But you may argue, well, the smaller creator is going to have a much smaller output, right, of what's kind of going on. But the I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so who's got the more to lose from a negative review? The small creator or the big creator that got paid, right? And so I feel like that's something that people don't talk about, is the biases of a small creator, which that's me. So if you take from that, this whole thing that you shouldn't trust me, don't watch my videos, sorry. Right? I mean, obviously I'm going to try to be as honest as I can, and I see that bias that I have in me. So I feel like at least if you see that bias, you can do more to mitigate it as much as possible. But it's the truth, and I think it's something that we need to talk about more, because all we talk about is paid reviews. Paid reviews, that's the bad stuff. Where I think small creators have just as much negative bias or positive bias towards the game that they're getting. So it's not about if there's a bias or not. It's if you're okay with that bias that they have. And that is going to be the real marker of if you want to watch that video or not. Right? And so, I don't know. Those are kind of my thoughts on that. I might do a video on it. I'm kind of scared to do a video because I feel like I'll get a lot of negative stuff, right? But let me know down below your initial thoughts on the biases of a small creator, because I think it's definitely a much different aspect of a small creator bias versus a big company that paid someone for it, right? If someone paid, I don't know. I think it is an interesting thought, I guess, at least. But I don't know. I'm still just folding clothes as I'm talking about board games. What are your guys' favorite board games? We were talking about Dante, so what's your guys' favorite dungeon crawler? Dungeon crawler or boss battler? That's another thing, is a lot of people will call a dungeon, or they will call a boss battler a dungeon crawler, which I don't agree with that at all. I think there is a huge difference. But what are your guys' favorite ones of that? Where did my clothes go? I'm trying to find, I'm folding my kids' clothes, and I'm just trying to find where I put them all. But what are you guys' thoughts on boss battlers versus dungeon crawlers? Paid review biases versus small creator biases versus any bias, right? Everyone has some innate biases from their environment, growing up, work, friends, who they hang around, acquaintances, right? Everyone's going to have some sort of biases. How do you get a review with the least amount of biases? Or maybe not least amount of biases, but biases that you're okay with. That's probably the biggest thing, is like, okay, they have this bias. Am I okay with that? Am I okay that they got money from it and therefore they might be a little bit more biased? Am I okay to realize that this small creator probably doesn't work with many reviewers or game companies, and so they might be a little bit more biased? Actually, I have an example of this. Board Game Co. I don't remember, it was a small channel, I don't remember what it was. Then I don't want to say, because I don't know him at all. But Board Game Co. Alex rated the Seven Horizon. Oh, what's that? I don't know. But Alex talked about that one, and he gave it a 1.5 out of 5. Now I watch Alex's videos all the time. The lowest I've ever seen is a 3. Actually, maybe I saw 1 or 2.5 ones. Anyways, all he does, right? His 3.5 is the average rating. And he gave this a 1.5. And the company sent this game for a review. I don't think he got paid. He usually doesn't do paid reviews. If he does, it's usually Meg doing the review and not Alex. He was doing like an unboxing and stuff. Anyways, so he was doing it, and he gave it a 1.5. Really? Like, that means a lot to me, because he does not give out 1.5s very often. So I'm like, oh, that game's kind of like, okay, maybe I don't want to look too much into that game, right? Well, then I watched another smaller YouTuber. Once again, I don't know his name, and I don't even want to know his name because I don't want to say something bad about him. But he recommended the game. He said, yep, this is a game that I definitely want to play. I would recommend getting it, right? And he's recommending it. I understand people have different aspects, but is that biasy pulling out, where Alex is not going to get hurt by calling a game a 1.5, right? His business is not going to hurt that bad by calling a game 1.5. Now, a small creator like mine calls a game a 1.5. That company doesn't want to work with me again. That company's not going to send me any more games to review. It might go around to say, hey, don't go to this YouTuber, because I don't know much about him. The only thing I know is that he gave my game a horrible review, right? And so I could go around. And so that bias of a small creator, I feel, is kind of rough. It's kind of just as bad. Once again, maybe just as bad. It's just different. It's just something that has to be noted because it's not talked about. I feel like that's one bias that is just not talked about of the small creators. And I didn't even think about it until I became a small creator, right? And I was like, oh, snap. Like, luckily, every game I have done, I've been very particular on which games I do accept because I don't want a game that I don't enjoy, right? I don't want to get a game that I don't enjoy. Even if you get it for free, you still don't want a game that you don't enjoy, right? So I've been pretty picky about the games that I accept, which is why I've only done a handful. But feeling like when I'm doing those videos, I feel that pressure to like, oh, I don't want to say anything bad because I want this company to like my videos. I want them to like my things. So how I don't want to, obviously I'm going to be honest and I'm going to go through the stuff that I don't like, but I afraid like, well, what if I really don't like a game? Like I would put it on 1.5. Can I, as a small creator, give something a 1.5 and still thrive? Right? That is the question. Now, if you have a more, but once again, you have to get bigger to get those people who, you know, if you're backed by the community, right? And they will accept you. But if you can't review games because no one will send you a game because you're just known as a critic, then how to do it? You know, like King of Average, he's had to work hard because he's kind of a critic, the main critic of the board game world, right? And so he doesn't get a lot of people just sending him games, right? He definitely does still some, right? I'm not saying, because some companies like that, but he's big enough now that he can continue to do that, right? He just did his fundraiser where he's funded over $8,000 from the community, right? So you can definitely make it work, but it's definitely harder, right? Because I want to be able to, half of my reason why I like to do YouTube is because I'm helping the creators, right? These indie companies who just need, you know, screen time. I want to help them out, right? I want to do what I can, both for the creator, because they've worked their butt off for years making no money on it, and I want to help you guys out so you guys know what you can and can't buy, but what you should or shouldn't, or if it's for you or not for you, because there's so many board games, especially the small indie games. It's like, well, if it's an indie game, is it good? Those are the more like shifty ones, right? Those indies, because you never know. And so I like to do it, but just the biases that you have to understand that you have. I think that is the biggest thing, is to understand your biases. Obviously, you can't change you as a person, but if you could understand your biases, then you could kind of control for that factor, at least a little bit more, if not a lot bit more, right? I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on all of my gibberish? Because I'm just kind of jibber-jabbering about it right now, which is why I want to make a video, which I would, if I make a video, I'm going to make much more coherent thoughts together and kind of plan that a little bit better rather than just rambling about it. But what are you guys' thoughts on that? This is my first time kind of vocalizing my opinion in all of it. And I just want to see if people agree, or maybe there's something I haven't thought about within it all that would help me change my mind or change my thoughts on it. I don't know. But for those of you that have been with me while I fold my kids' clothes, it's been great. I'm probably going to go now because I'm just about done. But if you're watching this afterwards, please let me know. I want to know your thoughts, both on boss battlers, dungeon crawlers. I think I'm going to do a video on the upcoming, not the upcoming, but my top dungeon crawlers, because dungeon crawlers is kind of what brought me into this board game world. So I'm definitely a dungeon crawler type guy. I have a lot of those. And so I'll go through my top 3 or top 5. I haven't decided yet. But I'm definitely going to go through that. So it might still be a couple weeks till that video comes out because I've got other stuff planned. But let me know your thoughts. And I will see you later.